Money, 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 who has all the money? Money, 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 who has all the money? Money, 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 who has all the money? It's Apple.
Who has all the money? It's not us. It's Apple. Hi, everybody. Jason Snell here. Dan Moren there. Live from the... it's the Boston Bureau, I guess. That's great. It's great. We are here to talk about Apple's third quarter. It's so confusing because they're off, but they're only off by one. Third quarter results, which were released as we record this earlier today. Record this and stream it live on YouTube. I made a lot of charts. I like to start by reporting that my automation that was trained on the last 4 or 5 PDFs failed. So I had to do it. I had to enter it by hand. I don't know what failed about it. I don't know why it failed on this one and not the other ones. I'm going to have to investigate that at a later time. But when it's results time, you just say, okay, that didn't work, and you punch in the numbers. That's what you have to do. So I did it. Dan, I was watching CNBC beforehand for the 5 minutes the 5 minutes before the results come out that are the 5 minutes I watch CNBC every quarter, and they were taken aback by what happened because Apple surprised the street and surprised the analysts in having what turns out to be another record quarter. It's a third fiscal quarter record for them. Right, like technically you would be put technically in jail, actually, for that. The worst kind of jail, technical jail. Yeah. So, you have any top line thoughts before I blow people away with chart by chart analysis? Oh, they can't hear you, they say. That's a shame. Why? I see Dan just fine. Okay, let's try. Yeah. Say something now.
All right. How about now? Can we hear me now? The insights, they have been insightful and deep.
Amazing.
You'll never know.
Well, I've switched to a totally different input that is should be less reliable and yet somehow is more reliable.
Well, they see me, but they can't hear me. You still can't hear me?
I'm seeing the little lines go up and down now. So I think that was a
Okay. Now people said hello.
Yes.
And now can hear me. Great. Okay. Here's what I was going to say. Here's the thing that struck me looking at this. So Q3, not traditionally Apple's strongest performing quarter, obviously. I think it tends to be kind of middle of the line.
Yeah, it's a sleepy quarter.
You get some back to school stuff, but like it's not huge. You get WWDC, there's sometimes hardware, there's sometimes announcements, sometimes there's not. So like it's kind of hard to peg down. But what's interesting about it is that I saw, okay, in this sleepy quarter, they pulled $94 billion in revenue. And I looked at, we'll get to your charts in a second of revenue, but I thought to myself, we are on track for non-holiday quarters starting to hit like $100 billion on average for Apple. I think it's not far off that we are going to have just an average quarter for Apple is $100 billion. Quarters. That is a staggering amount of money that is hard to comprehend. And again, we keep saying that, where's the ceiling? I think it's hard to imagine that like it can just keep going and going, and yet it does. And that is it's just difficult to fathom even at this point. It feels increasingly like monopoly money. So
don't say monopoly out loud. No.
Sorry.
Ixnay on the monopoly
May. Yeah. So that was just a thing that struck me. And then other than that, the other thing that struck me was that this would every quarter has its down spots, and we'll talk about those too. There were relatively few, between the geographies and the product lines. There was almost none. There were basically 2 product lines that were down. And those for reasons that were, depending on who you talk to or who you listen to, reasons that were kind of intriguing. So I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting quarter. There's no. What's weird about the third quarter too is we have all the WWDC announcements, but none of those are related really to things that have shipped. So there's kind of a nothing quarter, but just the sheer volume amount of stuff they sell just keeps everything rolling.
So there are a few things that came out it's good pre-chart talk because it doesn't come out in the slides. You're right. When you talk about this kind of inevitable 100 billion quarter, boring $100 billion quarter, among the data points that they threw out there is that they continue to reach all-time highs in their installed base. And installed base, look, in the old days, installed base was way more of an art than a science. I had imagined that Apple is probably trying to do. I mean, they're doing whatever's most favorable to them, but it could be estimation based on logged in devices, or it could be estimation just based on what's been taken out of service, but what they estimate is active. So there's a level that it can be a self-serving statistic, but the fact remains that they keep saying that their install base goes up. And then we got many comments this time about 10 years in with the Apple Watch, they say that this quarter, more than half of the people who bought the Apple Watch had never bought an Apple Watch before.
Wild.
And that's why you get the ratcheting up. So I was thinking about this because Apple is one of the most profitable, most valuable companies in the world. But if you think about it, it's a little bit like the flip side of the Facebook can't continue to grow at a certain level because there aren't enough people on the planet. They would need other planets.
Yeah.
This is a little like that, which is Apple is big, but Apple, every single one of the products, even the iPhone that's in Apple's product line, has headroom, right? I mean, there is always risk that they're going to have trouble and that they're going to go down. But I think the flip side of it is, even if it's not an enormous boost from quarter to quarter, in these calls with these stats, I know it's the message they want to send, but it's hard not to read it that Apple's got space to just keep getting bigger without it being even super dramatic. Just sell another person an Apple Watch for the first time and know that the existing Apple Watch install base has just grown by 1, and that in a few years, most of those Apple Watch buyers will buy another one on top of that. And the ratchet keeps happening. And
you're always getting new customers, right? People are being born. People are getting old enough to buy phones and Apple Watches.
Sure.
So you always get new customers. The number that jumped out at me, I believe they gave us, was they just sold their 3rd billionth iPhone.
Yeah.
Since launching in 2007, which is a lot. A lot of iPhones.
3 billion. They shipped the 3 billionth iPhone. They said they shipped it, so they may not have sold it, but it'll
be sold probably.
Yeah, there's a golden ticket inside, and if you get it, you get to
run Apple. That explains the succession plan.
You get a lunch at Cafe Max. That's it. That's all you get.
Wow, a free lunch.
No,
Nice.
you have to pay
Great.
for it, but you can eat it. They'll let you in.
Tim Cook does,
to pay for it.
Not unlike Willy Wonka, Tim Cook does have a glass elevator. So
that's true. But is it great, or is it just? I heard it's kind of only okay.
It's okay.
See, okay, great. Okay, glass elevator.
Anyways.
So yeah, that is. It's just something that I was thinking that's not in the stats. Is this?
Yeah.
I don't even know how to characterize it, but is this kind of so subtle in a way that you can ignore it, but it's what you said, which is turnaround in a boring quarter is almost 100 billion. How do you do that? And the answer is you just kind of keep expanding your territory. And unlike some companies, I do think Apple is right. I mean, they didn't say this, but they're implying it, that they have plenty of untapped resources. And in fact, a story that they've told in the past, they told it about China. They still tell a version of it in China. They tell it about India, and other. They said that they were up in both developing and industrialized nations. This is also part of the story. Is even if there's a place like the United States where Apple can grow, but maybe not as much, you've also got all these other countries where changing global economics are creating new,
more customers.
It's not just people being born, right? It's people who are now
have the means to buy
an Apple product. Yeah. And that makes a difference too for them.
Yeah.
So
in in other words, stuff it, AI.
I didn't
keep
say
selling
it.
phones. You don't need to talk about AI. You keep selling phones forever. Anyways, we'll
There's
talk
a lot
about
of
it.
that was a narrative I saw out there. Was strangely Apple, which is beleaguered about AI, et cetera,
just fine,
is doing fine because they're selling products people want. And I know that. Look, we are not saying, oh, it's okay that Apple is behind in AI. That's not what we're saying. But we're saying that it can be overdone a little bit, just overdone a tad.
It's one thing to remember that they have the security to play the long game. Like,
that's right.
They could blow it for now, and they can still come around and like it will be a footnote, right? Like it's like, oh, Apple was slow out of the gate with AI, but they got there in the end, or they, depending on what happens in the rest of the sector, you don't know. I mean, they can sit and wait a little bit.
The greatest bulwark against Apple's irrelevance is the fact that the smartphone is the most popular product ever. And I think I said this on, maybe it was MacBook Weekly this week, but like I really believe that in the end, it's going to be very hard, not impossible at all, but it's going to be hard to replace the smartphone because everybody's got one, and because ultimately it's in smaller mobile devices, you're going to always struggle with a need for connectivity, battery, and compute power, and honestly, and the optional display, so you can see a photo that somebody wants you to see. And I know it sounds like the future for an AI to tell you what the photo looks like and describe it to you so it can paint a picture, but it's better if you can see that photo, right? And as a result, everybody's got it, and it has those things. And so it feels more likely to me that we're going to be talking about accessories than replacements for the smartphone for a long time. Now, if you talk to Mark Zuckerberg, who doesn't have a smartphone, he'll say, no.
Or if you talk probably has more than one smartphone.
Or if you talk to OpenAI, well, I don't know. I don't know how he spends his money. Maybe it's all on those weird surfboard things that he rides. Or if you talk to OpenAI and Johnny Ive, right? They're like, well, we've got some ideas, but it's like, sure. But the truth is, smartphone, I think, is going to be at the center of it. And that's a huge Apple advantage. And that also means the other thing is Apple's not preventing all the AI stuff from running on its platforms. Why would it?
Sure.
And that means it's got a lot of opportunity to just, keep rolling, keep building its own thing, but also has this opportunity to just sort of like let AI kind of evolve and expand and figure itself out. And it's still selling people devices a lot. Yeah. So it's not unassailable, but it feels like a really comfortable position for them to be in.
Sure does. Yeah, I think it is it's enviable, I think, amongst many of the markets. I know some of the other, Amazon had a not so great quarter, but like, Apple does have a strong hold and they have reserves, and they are, I hate to say this as a company, but like they are conservative, I think, as a company.
They are
very conservative about what they do.
Conservative.
Yeah, what they choose to do, what they choose to spend their time and money on, what they release to the public, and that serves them well, because when you were conservative about that, you're also conservative about the fact that you've got billions of dollars in the bank, and it's like, well, they're conservative, as we've talked about before. They're conservative in a way only a company that had gotten that close to death can be.
Yes,
and a lot of the other companies that rose in the subsequent eras, right? Let's not forget that Apple is, almost got 2 decades on a lot of these companies like Meta and Amazon, and they've been around the block more. Microsoft is probably a closer contemporary, but they've seen a lot more and they've experienced a lot more. They've ups and downs. Those companies, a lot of them have not experienced those, so they can weather the storm.
And at risk of repeating ourselves, something that we've talked about before is the idea that Apple making money on hardware, unless even if AI is completely abstracted, you still need hardware to talk to it or see it or whatever. And that, unlike Google, which has this kind of somewhat existential crisis, they have a phone operating system, which is great, but their money is coming from search ads that are fading away.
They don't charge for Android, famously.
That's a little
a
terrifying for them. So this is an advantage Apple has, and that again, so what Cook said, they asked him about it, and he made a statement that is, I think, in the context of an analyst call, interesting, which is to say not that interesting, but interesting-ish. And that was, somebody was like, oh, mergers and acquisitions, talk about that and how you do that and AI and blah, 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 blah. And obviously, all this stuff is pre-cooked, but pre-cooked and then cooked, I guess.
And then cooked again.
Jumped on it. And he said, look, first off, we bought 7 companies this year already. So, a lot of them are small, but and they're not all AI companies, but we buy companies all the time. And he said something that I thought was really good. I feel like we're going to be quoting this for a while now, which is we buy companies, we acquire companies to accelerate
our roadmap.
Our roadmap, which first off, you are mixing
your map.
you're mixing your metaphors there. Maps don't accelerate.
He's an Apple Maps user, so it gets a little confusing at times.
But and it was the question used that metaphor first. So he was doing that too. But he says we are very open to merger and acquisition that accelerates our roadmap. We are not stuck on a certain size company, although the ones we've acquired thus far this year are small in nature. But we basically ask ourselves whether a company can help us accelerate a roadmap. If they do, we're interested, but we don't have anything to share specifically today. Now, there were stories, breathless headlines that were like, Tim Cook says Apple's open to acquiring AI companies. I was like, well, of course they are. But he also just spelled out for you how they view this, which is we don't buy companies to take us somewhere new.
Yeah.
We buy companies to get us where we want to go.
Right. We don't buy, and if you look historically, they don't buy finished products, right? They don't buy
not generally.
Occasionally.
Occasionally, you get your Beats with sort of a finished product or
classical, the music classical thing, right? They bought that whole service,
Siri.
right? Whatever. Yeah, but a lot of times it's let's buy this and tweak it or build it or integrate these people into our pipeline and figure out how we can do that. And I think, again, they are savvy, they are conservative. They're making bets, right? They're saying, well, yeah, why should we spend billions of dollars on Perplexity, on Claude, whatever, Anthropic, when we could buy something for a fraction of the cost that would help us build out all our stuff that we have there.
And they're all on our platforms anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We don't lose anything. And somebody asked them about that too, about how do you feel about AI search? Is AI, taken away from the iPhone as being used as a search tool, right? Are you seeing search queries from Safari go down because people are using AI stuff? And I think Tim's point was a little bit, but also they're using our devices to do those searches too, probably. So, yeah.
Another thing that is not reflected in the charts that we should mention. So tariffs came up. They actually talked about, they've gotten the wording together now where they're saying we're providing guidance based on that the global tariff rates, policies, and application remain in effect as of this call. The global macroeconomic outlook does not worsen from today. So they say this, and it's really interesting. They said that they figure that they had a it was $800 million or something that they paid toward tariffs, and they imagine it'll be higher next time by a little bit.
$1 billion, I think, but yeah.
And then they went into detail about how most products and categories in the U.S. are being shipped from somewhere other than China at the moment, but that they obviously they can move that stuff around. So that's still out there, and that's still an issue. And they're basically saying, look, we don't know. That guy could wake up tomorrow and say, Apple, you've got this other thing, and then we have to deal with it. So, we're saying uncertain times, but here's what we're saying. However, there was a third item in that list that I did not mention that I can't believe they mentioned it.
I did a whoop. I was listening in the kitchen,
which
and I was
like, the color we're providing. I love that they provide so much color. I mean, it's in the brand.
6 of them.
The color we're providing assumes that the global tariff rates, policies, and application remain in effect as of this call. The global macroeconomic outlook does not worsen from today, and the current revenue share agreement with Google continues. They said it. They said it.
They threw that dart. I loved later on somebody's like, can we dig into that? And they're like, yeah, we don't want to talk about it. It's like, you brought it up.
Yeah, Wamsi Mohan from the Bank of America said, you said similar growth in services, and that's predicated with Google payments continuing. Is there any way for us to dimensionalize? I love these analysts, or maybe just conceptually talk about maybe options if the counter were to happen, if the payments were not allowed in some way.
Hypothetically think about what might happen if maybe someday you could possibly not have what might be.
Some color on this. Tim Cook's response, and I will read it word for word. Yeah, Wamsi, I don't really want to speculate on the court ruling and how they would rule and what we would do as a consequence of it. Long silence on the call, and he's like, okay, I guess we'll wait for that ruling to come out.
Let's wait for the ruling. Yeah, it made me laugh. That was a good one. I could not, I mean, they have to have an expectation that there is I don't know if it's an even chance, but at this point, it feels like, well, it's kind of 50-50 how they decide they want to play this thing, right? And that could go away or it could stick around. We don't know.
They're not going to tell you what their fallback is because they want to win. And they're like, we're just going to see where it is. Yeah. And they've earmarked it as like, we're assuming that nothing changes. And if it changes, then our value, then our all of our plans are off, and we'll talk to you then.
That was a very interesting point. There were a few of those today that made me raise an eyebrow. The other one, I don't know if you caught this. They talked about the wearables, home and accessory being down.
Yes,
because of a tough compare, because of the iPad launches last year, which I did another thing. So this not enough pencils.
This is smart though, because
it was clever.
Because I believe pencil and cases for the iPad and the Magic Keyboard are accessories.
Sure. Yes, not iPad.
And so they don't go in iPad.
Yeah. But it's really funny that when they're like, iPad was down because the accessories were down. No, we can't. Circular reasoning,
Crisscross.
No, it was, but it let them, also the advantage to that, right, is it lets them collapse 2 down data points into 1 down data point, which is both of these categories were down because the iPad was a tough compare.
Yeah. I think, right, because the iPad, this is the quarter that the new iPad Pro came out last year, so that is actually a tough compare.
Sure, absolutely. But they get to bundle them. It's a twofer.
Accessories is in there too, which was overwhelmed by the fact that they didn't grow Apple Watch or anything else or AirPods, right? But still, I get it. That's the thing we don't, just like how we don't talk about Google and Apple Care when we talk about services revenue, we don't talk about things like iPad. I wonder how different the charts would look if because iPad is such an accessory story.
Yeah.
That I think this comment highlights the fact that they probably sell a really nice average amount of money in accessories every time somebody buys an iPad, because you're putting that in a case. You might buy a keyboard, you might buy a pencil. There's incremental, and that doesn't go to the iPad line. It goes to the
you don't see that. I don't think you see that nearly as much. Certainly with the Mac, maybe the phone, but there's so many third-party phone accessories. There are fewer that are tied directly to Apple, right? You might buy a case from somewhere else.
They sell a lot of iPhone cases, but they also.
But there's nothing like the pencil or the keyboard that's an exclusively pair. What are you going to buy for your iPhone?
Yeah. There's some stuff, but it's not. Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, I agree with you though. I think the iPad is the strongest accessory story they have. So I thought that was really an intriguing thing that they mentioned. And there was one other one that you mentioned Apple Care, and I was surprised they did not mention Apple Care 1. I know it's just launched, but it's often a thing there where they throw in and of course, we just announced this new thing.
New service, yeah. Too much time bragging about Emmy nominations, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. So many. And then the other one I liked was, they they talked about using the Apple Vision Pro for like pilot training, which was kind of a fun little. They always like throw in those enterprise things, but having now used an Apple Vision Pro more, I was like, that actually would. I feel like I get why that's the case. And then later on, when somebody asked about it, I always loved Tim when he's like, "Oh, I am so glad you asked about Apple Vision Pro.
Yeah.
I am so happy because we didn't have a chance to talk about it before." I always enjoy when Tim seems to actually be legit into something.
Yeah, I agree. I also noticed this time, and I mean, this is pretty standard, but that Tim gets to talk about the top level of all the product categories and mentions if it was up and doesn't mention if it was down.
Yes.
And then Kevin Parrick, the CFO, then has to mention that it's down.
Kevin has to break the bad.
He's the numbers guy, but Tim's not going to go negative. He's like, "Hey, iPad made a lot of money, and
Kevin's going to talk about that." Yeah.
And then Kevin's like, "Yeah, iPad made a lot of money. It was down.
It was down,
but don't mention it." All right. Speaking, that sounds like a segue. Maybe we should talk about the charts.
Let's talk about some charts.
What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, chart time, everybody. This is what people come to see. If you're listening to the Six Colors member only podcast, by the way, hi.
You can't see the charts.
You can't see the charts, but you can.
We
just
will
go to the
describe
website.
them for you as though we're an AI. It is a bar chart of green bars
with a number 64.7, 111.4, 89 points. No, okay. Total Apple revenue chart to start. This is
look at that rolling average.
It is a Q3 record at $94 billion. And Dan, again, I really like what you said, which is really getting toward routine 100 billion. It's just like it's kind of there.
I cannot. It's so close. Yeah, look at that. Look at that rolling average, right? You just popped up a little bit there.
That's like I would have to go back, but that's like 94 billion is like a holiday quarter in 2011.
Yeah, right?
2014. Something like that.
I feel like it's also one of those great time travel things where if you went back 20 years and told them you'd be looking at, you're going to, in this quarter, you're going to make $94 billion. And you didn't even really introduce anything
No,
new.
it was it was kind of a boring quarter. And they're like, well, how could it be boring if it was the holiday quarter? Oh no, it was Q3.
Oh, no. Yeah,
what?
Q3. What?
We made 94 billion in Q3, or revenue. We'll get to what you made, but
we'll get to profit.
You did. Okay. Yeah. Oh no, you lost. You lost so much money.
You lost 120.
You spent $1 trillion to make 94 billion. It's bad. It's a bad business, and you're about to go broke. No, the profit number. It's fun always to dig out there. Just pointing out again. In 3 months, Apple just generated $23.4 billion in pure profit. Just cash.
Yeah, so that's like...
Money.
So we're up to this quarter. So easily $100 billion in profit this year. Like, we haven't seen Q4 yet, but probably... I mean, Q4 is the lowest, but they've pulled, 86-ish? 85, I think they are probably going to hit $100 billion in profit this year.
Yeah, and Q4 last year had a weird charge against it that knocked the profit.
Yeah, you can see the drop there, but
unlikely
I think it's
to be repeated.
Yeah, that's a lot of pure profit. Can't even imagine.
It is. And then year over year, which is what the street loves to see, and what you get here is this is that march of growth. Again, they had a year where they were very slightly down. But they've now had 5 straight quarters where they are up, and again,
double-digit up this quarter.
It is not going to be a 50 or a 30, but yes, this is Apple's actually best year-over-year revenue growth quarter since Q1 of 2022.
Wow!
So it's a good quarter. That's the story here. Is this is a good quarter? It's not a blockbuster quarter by any means, but it's a very good quarter at a time when
10%.
Now,
10% growth, nothing to sneeze at.
We should say they estimate that in the U.S., Mac and iPhone sales were given a boost by tariffs. That we know that there were in April, especially people started to go out. And April, May, June, worried about Apple raising prices because of tariffs, and that is some pull ahead of sales that would have happened down the road. And they acknowledged it, although they said that they thought that was a relatively small amount, 10% or something like that.
Yeah, and I think they also did talk. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, they did. Tim did mention at some point that they also built ahead, right? Like that they
did.
And we heard those stories about them shipping over iPhones, right, to sort of hedge against that by like, hey, can we get these out the door before any tariffs,
right?
will affect
changes
them? So
that changes in the numbers based on
the
what
inventory and stuff like
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
Let's turn to Mac. Turning to Mac, as they say on the call. I am reminded again that we live in the era of, if not peak Mac, essentially it's peak Mac. There was right after the pandemic started, there were like huge Mac sales, but like the Mac is just kind of leveled off at a ludicrous average revenue per quarter figure. I mean, the Mac has,
it's about 8 billion pretty consistently.
it's 32 billion a year now,
Yeah.
basically, that's a lot of Mac money. That's a lot of Mac
and again,
money.
every time we talk about it, I have to remind yourself this product line is over 40 years old.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's hard to conceive of another technology product 40 years old that is still relevant.
They singled out MacBook Air sales being really good. They said that in China, the MacBook Air, M4 MacBook Air was the #1 laptop in urban China, something like that, which they even sounded a little surprised by that number. But I think that's really interesting, right? Where this goes back to the incremental thing of like, Apple's got a lot of challenges in China, but if they sold so many iPhones in China, we know what happens then, right? Which is you sell iPhones, then you do sell Macs to some percentage of those people who really like the product. And then you get something like the MacBook Air, which has just got so much going for it in terms of its features and its value, and you end up with a sales story like that.
Plus some unpredictable stuff where I feel like you also get just, people see them, people like share, there's some influence aspect to it, some cachet aspect to it, right? That I think
there's a whole
especially
flywheel
if you're
that happens.
Right, especially if you're starting with a smaller category of like not as many people have it, but then people see, ooh, that looks cool. Not as many people have it. Like it has, that's always worked in Apple's favor, I think, is being sort of the less common thing. Like it has drawn attention to it in some ways.
Yeah. The follow-on is the year over year, and again here you can see it that there was that huge spike that happened in 21 and 22, and then tough compare, folks. 23 not really way down in terms of numbers, just down off of that really big high. Since then, though, through all of fiscal 24 and the first 3 quarters of fiscal 25, the Mac has been back in growth mode, and a lot of those quarters it's been low growth mode. This was 15%. This is pretty good. They grew 16% during the holiday quarter, and then a really nice 15%. And again, powered by they cited the Air. They said also MacBook Pro and Mac Mini and Mac Studio.
Studio, yeah.
They listed them all there, but
sorry, iMac.
But yeah, so some real success going on in the Mac, which is cool to see because it is near and dear to our hearts, but also not the hot new anything.
Not the hot new thing, but I mean, I think as we say regularly, it's literally never been a better time to be a Mac user.
I hadn't really thought about this, I think, in this way before, but just to say, if a computer is just kind of an appliance, which was always Steve Jobs' kind of dream, I think, right? But if it used to be that it was so fraught and there were so many compatibility issues and things like that. But if it's just an appliance, I think that plays to Apple's strengths, because then like all you're doing is making it easier to just get the Apple laptop and be happy, instead of being like, I don't know, what about like, and the longer
comparison shopping
and the more people who are people of a certain age remember Apple as this kind of weird company. But like if you were a kid from 2003 on, there's none of that stigma. It's the iPod and iPhone company.
Yeah.
And it makes it, again, that much easier to get them to buy a Mac and not worry about it. And I think they're benefiting from some long-term trends there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move to the iPad. 6 point. So this is the one Tim did mention this. So 6.6 billion in sales, so down from 7.2 in the year ago quarter. As I said, it's a tough compare because they came out with the iPad Pro and iPad Air. Maybe it was an iPad launch a year ago.
Yep.
It's down, and so people will be bummed out about that. But I would say there were several. We'll see in a moment. Several successive quarters of growth, and while it's down, I would say 6.6 billion, not bad, and sequentially up, which I think is kind of interesting when there was not a lot going on there.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some back to school stuff happening there, or
I don't know.
pent up or people buying ahead, same sort of things. Kevin mentioned both iPad installed base reached another all-time high.
Yep.
And like the Apple Watch, over half the customers who purchased an iPad during the quarter were new to the product. So
right. 10 years
a lot
later.
of headroom in the iPad. Yeah, years later. I mean,
10 years later, people are buying an iPad who've never bought an iPad before. 15 years later.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. 15 years later.
Yeah.
So it's 10 for the watch and 15 for the iPad.
The iPad is a little mind-blowing in that sense because 15 years later, it does not really have any competition still.
I mean, look,
There's
fans
not
of
much in
Android
that tablet
tablets, we hear you, but like it just, you just don't. They're out there.
You don't hear
They're
people
mostly
using them.
It's mostly cheap. There are ones that are higher end. Google has, every time I talk to somebody who's an expert on Android, they say Google continues to make an effort to make the large app experience better and to get developers to make those better. If folding phones ever really takes off on Android, there's an opportunity there for them because I feel like Google is making changes to Android to make big screen apps better, mostly because of folding phones, not because of tablets, which is also really telling. And if Apple does a folding phone next year, like they got the iPad, right? It's in their back pocket.
They're already ready.
They're there. They're set.
Interesting stuff.
Here's the year-over-year change slide just to say, down 8% year-over-year. They said tough compare, but because it's coming off a 24% kind of growth. But I feel like the iPad, after being kind of in the doldrums there for a little while, has stabilized. And I think the other thing I would say about the iPad is it's a product with an exceedingly long cycle. Like,
sure, yeah.
It does not. iPads do not get replaced every year or every 3 years. They seem to get replaced every 6 years, 7 years. It's a long life cycle.
I'm trying to decide if it's even longer than the Mac in some cases. Because I feel like the people who use the Macs often are like, they're interested in having more powerful devices. Whereas if your iPad continues running Netflix, you're probably okay, right? Like, it doesn't. They don't show their age quite as much. I mean, I've got an M1 iPad Pro, and man, like, could fool me, right?
Yeah. Well, sure, for sure. All right, this is a slide that I think I was inspired to make last year at this time, because this appears
dinosaur. It's an underwater dinosaur.
This is product and services total profit. So I'm using. It's a very rough metric, but I'm basically taking their product and services revenue and their margin, and backing out a number that is the profit number. And the reason I did this is because last year at this time, when the margin on services was so huge and it was a quieter product quarter, I thought to myself, I wonder if Apple made more money from services than product this year. In the narrative, and I wasn't. Other people kind of hyped it up more, but I wasn't really making the point like, oh my God, Apple's a services company now and it doesn't care. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I think it is something. I think it is an interesting data point. It didn't cross. Apple still made more profit from products than services in this quarter, but it came closer.
Right. And it's interesting because that the product profit is so predictably seasonal, right? You see the peaks of those holiday quarters.
Holiday quarter.
You can tell almost exactly where that down trough is. And so from that, you can kind of see, like, based on the growth of services, it feels predictable, right? Like within, I don't know, by next year, maybe, I think there's a good chance that for the weakest, for the Q4, you could pass it.
Yeah, I'm bringing up the sheet here just momentarily, just to say, for those who want to look at exciting PDF. What you're looking at there is that Apple's net sales in products this quarter was $66 billion, and their net sales in services was $27 billion. We'll see the services line in a minute. But to make that $66 billion, it cost them $43 billion for products.
Right.
To make the $27 billion in services, it cost them $6.7 billion.
Right.
And that means the gross margin it's pretty dramatic, folks. It's pretty dramatic. So they didn't do it this time, but there will almost certainly come a day.
Inevitably. Look at that trend, right?
Unless the Google deal goes away. But unless there's something really dramatic, there will be a quarter where Apple banks more money out of their services business than their products business.
If that Google thing goes away, there will be a cliff.
Let me tell you. There's also a really great way you can misread this, which is I hear people talk about this and they're like, oh, Apple's just a services company now. I caution anybody to make that analysis because what nobody wants to talk about is Apple's built a services business, but it's entirely on the back of their products business. The services business does not stand alone. With a few exceptions, it is a way for Apple to generate more high profit revenue from its existing hardware buyers. Yeah. So it is paying for iCloud and stuff. It is generating search revenue from users of its hardware. And if there are no iPhones, there's no services revenue.
I mean, you can point to the fact that Apple TV Plus is available on a bunch of different platforms, or Apple Music's available on Android. But I think if they'll never give us these numbers, but what percentage of Apple TV Plus or Apple Music subscribers own one Apple device at least? It's got to be
100%
plus. Yeah, I was gonna say likely 100, but 90 plus, high 90s. Everybody, you're just. I don't hear from a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I'm a diehard Android user, but I listen on Apple Music." No, it just doesn't. It doesn't happen, right? You might watch an Apple TV Plus show or two. But
sure, TV Plus, again, maybe, but like most of what Apple is doing is either happening on device or it's to service users of it in its ecosystem, right? And the ecosystem, like, if you want to freak out and say, "Oh God, Apple is becoming a services company and they don't care about their products anymore," the moment to freak out about that is when Apple's services revenue no longer relies on a hardware ecosystem, but I don't see that happening. It is.
There's no reason not to, because it also helps their hardware.
Yeah. It's a symbiotic relationship. How do I make? I mean, to put it in the bluntest fashion, how do I make? Somebody comes in every 3 years and buys an iPhone for $1,000. I would like, as Apple, to make more than $333 in revenue a year on that person. How do I do that? And you can raise the price of an iPhone. You can do an iPhone upgrade program and you get a little more out of them. That's all true. But how do you get more money out of them? You can sell them accessories. You can sell them an extended warranty like Apple Care Plus. That's a service. You can sign them up for Apple One or get them iCloud backup for their phone so that they can back it up with a little extra storage, or and then you sell them a watch. That's more revenue that actually I would argue like watch revenue is really iPhone revenue too, because 100% of Apple Watch users are also iPhone users, right?
Right.
But then you can sell them Fitness Plus. You can sell them, it all is about, oh, we just took that person who was spending $333 a year on us amortized, and now they spend $500 a year with us. And that 333 is low margin for us. I mean, it's not. It's very high margin, but low margin for us. But the rest of it is like 90% profit. Like, that's why they do it. But so just to be clear, it's about making more profit on the people who are buying Apple's hardware. It's not about establishing a beachhead that allows Apple to stop making hardware. It's not. Yeah. The iPhone, when people are like, there was a comment in here, when does the tail wag the dog? The dog is the iPhone and the dog chooses when to wag, period. The tail just generates money.
I don't know a lot about dogs, but that seems like a great dog.
It's a great dog. Don't kill the dog that wags the golden tail. Let's move on.
Let's move on
and talk about the iPhone. Speak of the devil,
the
44.6 billion in revenue. This is the number that made CNBC people lean forward and go, say what now?
Oh, they love that number.
Because that's not what they were expecting. They were expecting it to be a down number or a flat number, and instead it was an up number. And we know that at least some small part of this is pull ahead from people who went out in May and bought iPhones because they wanted to get a new iPhone. They talked about the 16 family. I'm going to posit also that adding the 16E to the mix and having Apple be able to talk about the 16 family, I think is a really good move. I don't know how many of those that they're selling, but I think if it's as sounds true, they're going to start kind of like updating that formerly an SE phone on an annual basis, but in the spring, not in the fall. But having the kind of like, we have a range of iPhone 16s for you to buy. Yeah. I think it's going to be successful for them, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's a little bit of the story here too.
The 16E also, one of the clever things about that, and we'll see more when we kind of know about the 17 lineup, right? But like, they struggled a lot with this idea of like, mini phone, plus phone, etc. And I think the dimensionality, to borrow a term from our analysts, that they needed to be thinking about was maybe more about not form factor, but price and configuration. Because does the 16E, is it a hot seller? Probably not, but it provides access to a market they don't otherwise have. And in traditional Apple fashion, it is priced in a way that they are still going to do really well with it, right? Like,
exactly.
They are still going to make money off it. It's not a cut rate bargain basement phone. It's relatively expensive, but it's still cheaper than the base models. So adding that in as a yearly update is one way for them to continue to diversify the overall lineup without resorting to trying to figure out, do we make the phone bigger? Do we make the phone smaller? Do we make this year, of course, they'll make the phone thinner too, and we'll see how that plays in. I think it's an open question because it's a different sort of approach, but that gives them the flexibility to play around with a fourth, fifth model.
And we don't know what price that thing's going to have, right. But my guess is
expensive
that it will be built. Look, new products don't have the high margins at the beginning. It takes some time, but my guess is that product is built to throw off higher margins than other iPhones over time. If it's successful, that the iPhone Air or whatever they call it. Just to move to the revenue change slide, this is why the analysts were so excited. It's 13% year-over-year increase in iPhone revenue. Have not seen that number since the big inflationary expansion days of 2021. Has not been. There was
before that. That's pretty respectable in the.
It is. It's a really good iPhone quarter. Like, whatever the reasons, it was a really good iPhone quarter. They said according to whatever Kantar is called now, because it changed its name, World Market. No, that's Cost
I like
Plus.
that they had to tell us
rattan furniture. Sounds like World Panel, not World Market, where you can buy Toblerones, but
formerly
World Panel.
Kantar.
Formerly Kantar.
The firm previously known as Kantar.
They said the top 3 phones in urban China in this quarter were iPhones. So part of their narrative here is definitely, we are not as dead as you think we are in China, which is interesting. And there's a slide to that effect later. We're not as dead as you think we are in China either, by the way. Services revenue. Again, the world's most boring slide because the number goes up. But if the number doesn't go up, then we have a conversation to have. But 27.4 billion, a record. Dan, is Apple just going to turn into a services company and not care about hardware anymore?
Do you want to splice in our previous conversation?
This is a test. Say no. Say no.
No.
Okay, good. You learned something. I'm glad about that. No, the number goes up, and then I think the only interesting way to look at this really is in the revenue change, where you have seen for the last, 7 quarters, 8 quarters, they've been in the in the 10 to
14s,
16% growth. So 13% this time, but like basically that is a machine that is growing at a rate of, I don't know, 12% a quarter or 12% year on year.
Remember they rolled out their
quarter.
services business and were like, oh, our goal is to double our amount in
5 years.
And they did it in like 3 or something.
Yeah,
and
it hasn't stopped.
Yeah, I think even they sometimes are like, I don't know how to stop. Jane, get me off this crazy thing.
Whoever it was who sat in a meeting room at a whiteboard and was like, here's my idea. We really ratchet up services revenue and it's so profitable and we spend, I know we're going to spend money on stuff, but like we're going to make that money back and more because the margins are so high and our install base is so large. And there was a meeting at some point where somebody had that and they were like, yes, let's commit to doing that. And I don't know, maybe that was Luca. Who knows who it was? Maybe it was Eddie Q. I don't know. Regardless, I hope that person made a lot of money because that person made a lot of money for Apple.
They sure did. I enjoyed the SNL skit version of that, which is like, here's my plan. And it's just somebody draws a line that just goes up. And they're like, what is that? It's like the line. It goes up. Like, that's my plan. What, is that a thing? No, it's a line that goes up. That's what I'm selling you. It worked.
Gross margin. Just, I pulled that margin chart forward, but just so we're clear, the overall margin of the company. So this is actually where you will see the increasing percentage of services in the overall composition of the business is the reason the gross margin keeps going up. Because the more services is in your composition, the more margin you've got. It's that simple. So 46.5%. Down a little bit. Why is it down? Tariffs. Basically.
Tariffs. Yeah, so we were down, what, 600? Yeah, 600 million. Yeah.
But still. I mean,
we'll see what that looks like next quarter.
Ask a business person how they would feel about getting 46.5% margin. They say they love it.
They say that's insane.
Wearables, home, accessories. 7.4, the lowest number on the chart. So we talked about this last time, and I feel like we got to talk about it again. What's going on in wearables, home, and accessories? And I think what this is that the Apple Watch is fine, but not triggering
what's going
a lot.
on, Jason, is nothing.
and the bigger point, even though I know they did like the new like irregular AirPods, mark my words, AirPods Pro update this fall and watch this category go pop back up, because I think the biggest thing going on in this category is that the AirPods Pro 2 is an incredibly popular product, and the AirPods Pro in general, and they haven't updated it in years now. Yeah, I think that's a big deal.
It's an interesting category. I mean, it's a mishmash, right? There's a lot of stuff in here. There's also some rumor about a new Apple TV. Whether that's a driver, who knows? I mean, it'll contribute, but the question is, as always with so many of these products, like, what are they doing that's new and different?
And keep in mind, I mean, this category used to be called Other. It is stuff swept together into one place.
And now it's called what?
What? It's like the Keanu Reeves category. Anyway, it's fallen on some hard times. Again, it's down 9% year over year. It's had a lot of like down 2% year over year, and then a couple that are a little bit more. It's just kind of the air. This was pacing with services for a while, and then the air came out of the balloon. So the question is, how do you get? And my questions are: is there an appreciable Apple Watch update that will drive a bunch of people to upgrade the Apple Watch or get new people in the Apple Watch or not? Because like the Ultra didn't really do it. As far as I can tell. And again, I'll come back to it is, I know they're not that expensive, so you have to sell a lot of them to drive revenue, but it feels to me like the number one thing that would make this category happy is new AirPods Pro.
Yeah, I think you're right. And especially if you look forward to a holiday quarter where you've just introduced new AirPods, that's going to be a huge seller, right? Like I think AirPods in a holiday quarter are big. The watch, the interesting thing about the watch too is there is, a lot of discussion about 10 years in, the watch is fundamentally, it looks pretty similar. could you goose this by changing up the design?
Right.
I don't know, but
don't know.
seems like a thing at some point you're going to want to try because it is iconic. I will give you that
Yep.
much. Like it has a look to it and a feel to it, and they've done a lot with it, right? In terms of expanding the screen and making it a little thinner and all of those things. But at a certain point, you top out on what you can do, and the question is it worth changing the design in some way and the risk that you have from do bands becoming compatible?
Let me tell you,
etc.?
I think. Okay, boy, I'm throwing out all my great column ideas now, but I'm going to toss this one in there too, which is. What the lesson that Apple has taught us the last few years, and I think we're going to get another version of this lesson this fall with the iPhone, is it might be wrong for us to think about how Apple used to approach diversity in its product lines. That it used to be there's an iPhone, maybe there's a bigger iPhone, but we are this fall there's going to be an iPhone Pro, a big iPhone Pro, an iPhone not Pro, and a thin iPhone. And then in the spring, there'll be like the bargain basement iPhone. 5, right? Like, because we have that now, except it's the big base iPhone. But it's like there are 5 different iPhone models now. Not 1, not 2, 5. There's 2 Apple Watches. You could... I don't think there's anything stopping them other than desire and engineering time and all of that from making a dramatically new looking Apple Watch that breaks band compatibility. Maybe it's got like a round face. Maybe it's like a totally different kind of concept and still sell the other Apple Watches.
Sure.
Like literally just say, we're doing another Apple Watch and it's really different. And the OS has been updated to support this kind of display too. And we're going to just keep selling them. Because I think that a lot of people are like, oh, it's iconic. How do you want to, why would you stop selling the thing that people like? And Steve Jobs might say, well, yeah, just cancel that and sell a new thing instead. But like Apple is at such a scale now that they can just make another Apple Watch that looks totally different and still sell the other Apple Watches. And it would be fine. And they would reach different audiences with the different models. And like today's Apple, I think feels like they're much more comfortable doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it makes sense. And, you've got the SE in there too in the mix and, the 10 and the Ultra. So they kind of try that. But I agree that there's room in that lineup. I mean, like they said, 50% of people are new. There's some people who would buy a different Apple Watch just to have a different Apple Watch.
Yeah, I mean,
10 years in,
I know
you can afford to shake it up.
Mike Hurley has said for like a few years
Mike
now,
complains every year that
he wants to try the round. And I saw was it the Samsung or the Google? I saw a Dieter who used to be at The Verge, who's now at Android at Google, had a picture of an Android Wear watch, and I don't even remember what model it was, but it looked really good. And I thought, look, I know there are weird things about the round interface. I know we've seen that with Android Wear and the Samsung watches for a while now. My Nest had a weird interface because it had a round display. Like, I get it. However, traditionally watches were round. There are things you can do with it. It's kind of a UI playground. Might be fun if you're Apple to think about ways to reinvent that. I don't know. I feel like we make a mistake. It's like a false dichotomy if we say, does Apple do a new watch design or stick with the old one? Maybe they do both.
Maybe they do both. Why not both?
Why not? That's going to be my well, everybody can watch that. That'll be my Macworld column in a couple weeks. 4K, no los dos. The pie chart. I do a pie chart. It's fun. It just reminds everybody how important the iPhone is to Apple's business. If you forgot, because all these other charts are. Once a year, I do the one where I plot them all together, and it's a joke because you have to scroll down to see the other products. So the iPhone bar is all the way up there, and there's nothing else, and you have to scroll down to see the others. Just a reminder: services is at 29%. That's very impressive. iPhone 47% of their revenue here. Mac 9, wearables 8, iPad 7. And again, I will say the 29% of services, how much of that is on the back of the iPhone? I'd say about 47%. Well, I mean, you got to take that out. More than half, maybe 3/4.
Oh, yeah. Maybe more. Especially if you're including the Google deal, right?
Yeah,
That's
right. Which is a huge amount of that is coming from search on mobile as well. And then this is my this is like the troposphere atmospheric layer chart,
Yes.
which is basically like another way of visualizing over time the importance of the iPhone product line. Services, continues to be large. And then the spike in services is actually because the iPhone gets bigger in the holiday quarter. But this is a really nice, it's not a layer cake. It's more of a parfait with iPad, Mac, and Wearables down there at the bottom. So enjoy. Dig in.
Enjoy. It's delicious.
Regional revenue call out. Just wanted to point this out. What's Apple's biggest market? It's still the Americas. Almost 45 billion in revenue in the Americas. Europe, Middle East, and Africa, which also includes India, is in here too. Anyway, that is a pretty solid market for them. When people say Apple should just leave Europe, no. China, after a spike, has been. We'll see that in a moment in the last slide. Pretty kind of like holding its ground. Japan, rest of Asia Pacific down there. Sometimes people ask me why Japan's its own breakout, and the answer is there was a time when Apple's second largest market for the Mac was Japan.
Yeah.
And so it called out Japan separately. And now Japan and rest of Asia Pacific are largely there as a legacy thing. And I think I'm actually a little surprised that Japan hasn't been rolled into rest of Asia Pacific.
Yeah, and so it's the same. It's just a generational story. The same thing with China, right?
Yeah,
they called out China for that reason.
That said, if you look
at
at that number, Apple still makes a lot of. Apple's big in Japan, to coin a phrase. They still make there's only 2 countries on this chart.
Yeah.
China and Japan. The rest of it is Americas. Americas mostly is the United States, but if you sell a Mac in Canada or Argentina, it's in there
Mexico,
too, right?
Yeah, sure.
But Japan. So good on you, Japan. Keep reaching for that rainbow. And then year-over-year growth for 3 categories. Sorry, Japan, you're not in there, but just to show you, they're all in the positive. Apple said they grew in basically everywhere this quarter. All to the positive. And then the final slide is my year-over-year Greater China revenue change, just to point out one of the other reasons that the analysts are kind of happy and that Apple's narrative is a little bit different is that Apple's actually up in China, and it's the first time they've been up in China in 6 quarters. So they're happy about that, and that the Mac did pretty well and the iPhone did okay. And there are some incentives and stuff that the Chinese government put in that apparently have been a little bit of a benefit to them too. And that's it. Those are the charts for this time.
The charts. I did have one other thing I was thinking about that came up during a question period that I thought was worth discussing.
Yeah.
Which is, in some of the tariff discussion, one of the things that Tim spent some time talking about, and they called this out as well in the remarks, was their manufacturing in the U.S., which is an interesting, fun thing to talk about, which is one of the things he discussed is he brought up, obviously, that $500 billion investment that they touted, the deal they recently made for recycling the rare earth magnets, and then a couple other interesting things, including that recent announcement about their manufacturing academy
in Detroit.
that they're opening in Detroit. And they said, we're doing more in this country, and that's on top of having roughly 19 billion chips coming out of the U.S. now. And we will do more. And of course, glass from iPhone and the Face ID module. So there's loads of different things that are done in the United States.
Yes.
Very targeted as a set of comments.
Yep.
Tim Cook, no dummy, knows where his bread is buttered. Interesting
buttered
because I
in the
think
United States is where
it's buttered. Yeah. It's with the United States butter, Wisconsin butter. I find it fascinating because, again, a lot of these things, if you take a step back, are not quite as cut and dried as he talks about, right? The $500 billion investment. Well, they've invested a lot of money in the past.
Yeah.
19
some of that
billion chips.
was probably not new. And
right. 19 billion chips coming out of the U.S. What kind of chips? Where? For what products?
They're potato chips, Dan.
We're not talking about it.
Legacy
I love
notes.
that I love that they call it the glass and the Face ID module, if only because despite the saying there's loads of different things, I feel like those are the two things they mention every
glass
time.
Corning,
the Corning glass,
the Face ID
and that
module,
Face ID module, which is no wonder it's so expensive.
Assembled and then sent to China,
and so
or Vietnam or wherever.
are there a lot of things happening? Like, because they talked about one of the things they discussed here is like, we're doing a lot and we're going to do more.
Yeah.
And, you know, this was kind of talking about manufacturing where the iPhone is and like shipping in and avoiding tariffs and et cetera. And there was almost like some little bit of like, oh, you know, we're going to build more stuff in the US. And nobody really pushes on the like, but there are limits, right? There are things you can't do, but they're not going to talk about that. They're going to sell it very much as, you know, look at all the stuff we do. We're great for United States manufacturing.
I thought this was the best little moment in terms of the tell about where Tim Cook is right now.
Yeah.
Which is, it's two sentences where you can watch as he pivots, which is the questions about tariffs. And he says, in terms of what we do to mitigate, we obviously try to optimize our supply chain. And ultimately, we will do more in the United States. That is the pivot there, which is, look, yes, right now, we will ship to the U.S. from whatever country has the lowest tariff. But wait.
There's more.
Over time, obviously, the other way to get around these tariffs is to do more stuff in the U.S., but they can't do it right now. And yes, that is a statement that is not necessarily calibrated for the people at the White House who are listening to the analyst call, because that probably doesn't exist, although they may read some of the reports about it. But it's, I would say, probably the same phrase that's used when they talk to the White House.
Sure. Yeah. And it doesn't hurt them to say it publicly as part of their image or as part of their message that they're trying to promulgate, that we are all in, we're gung-ho about manufacturing stuff in the US. He's, you know, you got to play politics when you're at the level that Tim Cook's at. And we've learned that pretty firsthand over the last year. So
yep, we've seen him do it.
No surprise here that's continuing.
Makes people mad sometimes.
Yep.
I think, you know, the billions of dollars involved is why that happens, and it continues to happen. And yeah, these are individual policy decisions that can change what this company does by billions. And so they are, I mean, I wouldn't want that job. The pay is great, but geez, the stress.
A lot of stress. Yeah.
But
Gotta be working out constantly.
They are. However, I will say this. This will make somebody mad, but look, whatever. Do I think, regardless of the sophistry, regardless of the announcing things they're already paying for as things that they're now paying for, all of that PR stuff, do I think that the events of the last 7 months, but also the last 8 years, have had the net result that Apple is going to be doing more manufacturing in the United States? I think the answer to both questions, the last 7 months and the last 8 years, I think the answer is yes. I think, and you know, people should read that Apple in China book. It's really good. Apple in China happened basically out of expediency. It is a story. It's a great book. And the story is really incremental. It's like every time Apple just made the best decision for Apple. And the net result was that Apple taught China how to make high-tech products. And it's very profitable for Apple. And very successful, because Apple needed a place where they could invent things. That's the other part of it, is that, and this has been the story about Apple for a long time, is that Apple, how do you be Apple? And the answer is you have to do stuff nobody else is doing.
Right.
And they were able to find, China was a place where they could do that, where they could take a factory, because everybody else is like, I got this part from this factory. And it's like, Apple's like, nope, we're not going to do that. We're going to have an entire different process to do this thing. And that's why the iPhone will come out and everybody's like, oh my God, it does this thing that nobody else does. It's like, yeah, that's because they invented the process that does that. And it's not always just a part. It's literally the process that makes that possible to exist in a mass-produced product. Okay. Well, in the last 8 years, what's expedient for Apple has changed a little, because the U.S. policy that was, we don't want that stuff in the U.S., it changed under the first Trump administration, but even in the Biden administration with the CHIPS Act, which was bipartisan, the whole idea there was to get more chip manufacturing in the U.S. Not enough. I was listening to Dithering in the car this morning, and they were talking about that one of my favorite things that Ben Thompson has covered over the last however many years is Intel. But like, it is not too ridiculous to say that one of the great American technology and manufacturing disasters of the last 20 years is the utter failure of Intel as a company. Because they were number one, and their plants in the U.S. were number one at making chips, and now they are falling apart. And but anyway, so with the CHIPS Act, with TSMC, with Apple potentially even being a customer for Intel, like there's this the plant in Ohio that they built. I read a newsletter from a guy who used to live in the town in Ohio where they announced they were building and he sold his house, and he said, I think I sold it at peak Intel. But now they're like, we may not even finish that plant. We may not even put that plant in. They've like built neighborhoods and talked about like freeway changes and stuff for the Silicon Prairie, and it's going to be this amazing thing. And then Intel's like, maybe never mind. But whether it's there or somewhere else, maybe Apple will actually get Intel to fab some stuff for them, and that would be a way for Apple to have more production in the U.S. TSMC is building things in the U.S. And would that have happened? Nothing before 9 years ago would have put us on a trajectory for something like that. And I think that is a tangible. I don't think it's all just marketing BS, right? I think that there is for lots of governmental pressure reasons and political reasons, Apple has changed its tune because Apple wants to do what's best for Apple. And Apple was never committed, as much as Tim Cook was bullish on China as a market. In terms of manufacturing, Apple was only always committed to getting what it wanted. And if building more stuff in the U.S. gets it what it wants, then it will do that.
Yep, that's true enough.
So, hope you enjoyed this. If you're watching on YouTube, we talk about Apple stuff all the time. Visit sixcolors.com, become a member, and you can listen to our podcast that we do every week that people seem to love because they tell us they pay for it and then they say they like it. And I think that is a great endorsement. As somebody who sometimes suffers from severe self-esteem issues, it's really nice to hear that you could charge for something and people will say, I am glad I paid for it. So there, testimonial from unknown people. You could just take my word for it. Maybe I'm lying, but I tell you I'm not.
That would be a crime to bring us all the way back around.
It would be. And we will be back with that podcast next week, and we will be back here probably in 3 months to do this all again with many charts. But that's it for now. Dan, thanks for taking the time out of your evening to
my pleasure.
Join me and talk about charts.
I like charts and numbers. I really enjoy it.
It's good. We will see everybody another time. Goodbye.